state media has said that Khamenei is commanding the field. It's not saying whether Khamenei is alive or is dead, as the Israelis and the Americans are claiming, but an interesting use of phrase there, that he is still commanding the field. And joining us on the broadcast, we've got Dr. Alan Burstein, who's a professor of political science at the Tufts University. And he is, of course, joining us live from Boston. And he is also the host of the Israel-Palestine Report. So thank you very much indeed for joining us here on WION, Dr. Burstein. Now, the reports that are coming in, these are very crucial to this war. Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, the Israelis and the Americans say, is no more. He's been taken out in this American and the Israeli attack. Your first reaction to this?
Thank you for having me. At this point, the United States is really just citing what Israel is saying. So I would not yet take it as two different sources that are saying that Khamenei is dead. Instead, I think it's the Israeli intelligence, and they are claiming that they obtained a picture of his body and that it was shown to Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu, and that's how they decided that Khamenei is dead. I would imagine that they have other intelligence sources other than Netanyahu seeing a picture. But meanwhile, the United States is just repeating what Israel has said. At this point, everything really, if that is true, if that is in fact the case, then everything really depends on what happens with the rest of the administration. Ali Larijani was tasked by Khamenei already 2 weeks ago to prepare for what happens if Khamenei is killed. There's supposed to be an entire mechanism that now comes into effect to plan for succession and to make sure the regime survives. At this point, it depends on that. Israel has not assassinated Ali Larijani. Maybe there's a reason for that, maybe not, but it depends if that mechanism swings into gear, or if that breaks down, we will see chaos in Iran, but maybe that will lead to some sort of uprising and regime change.
You know, it's interesting how you say that this could potentially cause an uprising and a possible regime change, but what the Iranian state media is saying is interesting, that Khamenei is still commanding the field, but they're not saying whether Khamenei is alive or if he's no more. Should we read into what this particular phrase actually means, that Khamenei is still commanding the field?
I think that the most we could read into that is that at best they do not know, and at worst they actually do know but don't want to say anything, because when there was the initial airstrikes that happened, Israel openly said that it tried to assassinate Khamenei and that it didn't know the outcome. Then state media, Iran, Tasnim, said that Khamenei would soon be delivering a speech. Then he never came to deliver that speech. Then the head of one of the spokespeople was asked, and also the foreign minister, I believe, Abbas Araghchi, was asked about Khamenei, and he said, I cannot confirm if he's alive or dead. Now they put out this statement saying he's still commanding the field. They're gradually not using the phrase is alive anymore. So I think at best they don't know if he's alive or dead and are hoping that he's alive, or they know he's dead and are trying to cover it up because they are in fact worried about the chain reaction, that in Iran this will lead to a spiral of protests.
Interesting. Now, Dr. Burstein, in your assessment, if Ayatollah Ali Khamenei has been taken down in these Israeli and the American attacks, what do you think happens to this war? Do you think this is a war that Donald Trump can now say that, listen, we've taken out the top leadership and therefore we've achieved the objective and this war can come to an end?
I think Trump would certainly like to do that. Trump really wants wars to be short and sweet, and he wants to be seen as someone who, whenever he comes in, he launches an attack and it's all well and done in one foul swoop. So he would really like that. But it really depends also on what is the next thing that happens. If the Iranian people now break out and protest again, then very likely the United States will want to continue pressuring the regime with more attacks to try to make sure that there's actually that full rebellion. If, in turn, a new leader comes up, the president of Iran, we haven't heard about him. He was also a target of assassination. He was far more moderate than Ali Khamenei. If he is still alive, for example, and if he now would lead Iran in a way to say, you know what, let's just abandon the nuclear program and give Donald Trump a way to almost climb down from all of his statements and say, see, we killed Khamenei, we've achieved what we wanted, and we can go home now, then the United States would probably pull back, and that would give the Iranian regime time to now rebuild itself slowly. So it really depends on if the Iranian regime manages to get back on its feet quickly and present someone else that can try to continue on the way and maybe talk to the U.S., or if there's chaos, and then the United States may want to continue to try to create more chaos to bring about the end of the regime.
All right, interesting. Now, one of the names that is being talked about is that of Ali Larijani as a potential successor to Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. In your assessment, how different will Ali Larijani be to Ayatollah Ali Khamenei?
So it really depends what role he takes on, because within the Iranian regime, we have the religious cleric's role of the supreme leader and then the sort of religious council. And then we also have the political role. Now, Ali Larijani, was not necessarily set in line to be the next religious role. So if they appoint him to be sort of a political figurehead, then I think he might in fact try to take the war in a different direction and try to say, okay, we don't want to continue right now because we're worried about that internal spiral, so maybe let's try to back down. In turn, if they appoint him as supreme leader, if they now elevate him and put him as a religious figure, then he needs to assume a different role. He needs to have the hat of the person who continues on the way of Khomeini and then Ali Khamenei, and it would be much harder for him to back down. So I think if he comes up as the political role, then it'll be easier. If he is marked as a successor and he's given the title supreme leader in the same way, then he might have to try to continue to save face in order to gain the support of the rest of the regime and continuously try to go in the way of Khamenei. But again, it really depends on what happens with that mechanism that's supposed to take place now.
Interesting, and also considering the fact that you said that if the next person who steps into the shoes of Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, if they're willing to negotiate with the Americans on the question of Iran's nuclear program, but the Americans want a lot more than just the nuclear program. The Americans under Donald Trump want the Iranians to give up their ballistic missile program as well, which effectively means that there'll be nothing left for the Iranians to defend themselves. Do you think any self-respecting leader in Iran would accept those conditions?
So first of all, we do have to, I think, separate. Ballistic missiles are an offensive weapon. They're not a defensive weapon. Iran uses them as a way to ensure that they can have retaliations against Israel or the United States like we're seeing right now. But theoretically, when it comes to international regulations on offensive or defensive weapons, ballistic missiles are by definition only an offensive weapon. At the same time, the United States itself, when it first started these talks, when Trump started to say maybe we'll have talks, the United States was also only talking about the nuclear program. Israel pressured the United States to add the ballistic missile program, to add the support for proxies that has to end, to add all those things. And I think if, I'm certainly not an advisor to the Iranian regime, but if I was going to be an advisor, I would say you need to give Trump a way to step down and to be able to go back to the American people and say, look, I managed to achieve what I wanted. Much like we had in June last year when the United States bombed Bordeaux. The United States did not take out the nuclear program, but Trump went back and said, yes, we did. We completely obliterated it. So I think that Iran would probably have to say, we're willing to completely give up, surrender all the uranium, never again on the nuclear program, but we want to keep the ballistic missile program. That may be enough for Trump to already step down. Trump wants this to end quickly. If Iran probably will try to give him